My name is Sienna, and at 40, I believed I had life mostly figured out. I lived in a small, quiet town, the kind of place where every neighbor's name was familiar, and every doorstep held a memory. My home, tucked away at the end of a peaceful cul-de-sac, had always been filled with the gentle hum of everyday life. Until, 3 months ago, everything changed. One ordinary morning, I awoke to the scent of cold coffee and the soft light of dawn filtering through our kitchen window. Mark, my husband, was already gone. There was no dramatic farewell, no angry words, just a short note left on the counter, "I need space." No explanation, no goodbye, nothing but those 3 heart-wrenching words. I stared at that note, my hands trembling as if the paper itself were as heavy as my grief. In that moment, my stable world began to crumble. The following weeks were a blur of hollow routines. I managed the bookstore I owned, returned to an empty house each evening, and ate meals alone at a table that once brimmed with shared laughter. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by questions. What had I done wrong? Where were the signs I had missed? With my family scattered, my parents retired in Florida and my younger sister living far away, the only presence in my life was our neighbor Rachel, who, with her contagious joy and her 2-year-old son, made my loneliness even more pronounced. Then came Liam. Mark's nephew, a college student newly arrived in town to attend the local university. When he called, asking for a temporary place to stay, I felt compelled to agree. I had plenty of space in my empty home, and I hoped that his presence might soften the oppressive silence that had taken over. Liam arrived on a rainy afternoon, his car packed with boxes and books. In many ways, he reminded me of Mark in his youth, a tall, lean figure with a crooked smile that once charmed my heart. I forced myself to look away, trying to hide the lump forming in my throat. "Thank you for letting me stay," Liam said softly as he carried his belongings into the spare room. "It's no trouble at all," I replied, though uncertainty lingered in every word. I wasn't sure how this arrangement might change things, but the prospect of having someone around brought a glimmer of hope to my shattered heart. At first, Liam was quiet and reserved, retreating into his room or disappearing into the university library. Yet, gradually, small moments began to mend the jagged edges of my solitude. We exchanged shy smiles in the kitchen, and one evening, he offered to cook dinner. As we sat together at the table for the first time in weeks, his gentle inquiry, "You must miss him," resonated deeply. His empathy and genuine concern made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced for a long time. In the quiet nights that followed, our shared moments grew more intimate. Liam listened intently when I spoke about my favorite books, and I marveled at his passion for photography as he showed me snapshots of the world seen through his lens. There was warmth in these moments, a connection that filled the silent spaces in my heart. One evening, while the rain softly tapped against the windows, Liam entered the living room with a mug of tea. "You look like you could use this," he said, his voice gentle as he handed me the steaming cup. Our fingers brushed, and in that fleeting touch, I felt a spark, not just the warmth of the tea, but an electric, unsettling surge of emotion. I dismissed it, blaming my frayed emotions on loneliness. Yet, as days turned into weeks, the small, charged moments accumulated. A brush of hands here, a shared laugh there, each encounter deepening the silent bond between us. One night in the kitchen, while we washed the dishes together, our hands collided once more. We laughed nervously, but as I met his gaze, the air between us seemed to pulse with a secret intensity. I told myself it was only kindness, that I was desperate for connection. But deep within, I recognized that my heart was straying into dangerous, uncharted territory. Late one night, as the rain murmured against the windows and I lay wide awake, the conflict within me became unbearable. I knew I was on the edge, a precipice between what was right and what my heart desired. I was Mark's devoted wife, yet the loneliness and despair had created a void that Liam's presence had begun to fill. His understanding eyes, his gentle reassurances, and the way he made me feel valued stirred a confusion I wasn't ready to face. Then, one fateful evening on the back porch, Liam's gaze held mine as the sun dipped below the horizon. "You've been through so much," he murmured. "I don't know how you do it." His words, laced with both admiration and something deeper, made my heart race. I whispered, "I just keep going. I don't have a choice." But his next words pierced through me, "You're stronger than you think." In that charged silence, the space between us grew thin. Our eyes locked in a moment filled with unspoken desire, regret, and longing. I wanted to retreat, to deny the feelings surging within me, but every fiber of my being ached to be honest, to feel something real after months of numbness. The inevitable moment came one night as we cleaned up after dinner. Liam reached out, his hand grazing mine, and suddenly the distance between us evaporated. His touch was both comforting and electric, stirring emotions that left me breathless. In that heart-stopping instant, his forehead rested gently against mine, and he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I opened my mouth, desperate to say that this was wrong, but the words were lost in the overwhelming tide of my feelings. A single tear slipped down my cheek, a silent admission of the turmoil raging inside me. Panicked, I pulled away. "I can't, I'm sorry, Liam. I can't cross that line," I stammered, my voice trembling with guilt and fear. His eyes, a mirror of both pain and understanding, pleaded silently for something I was too conflicted to give. "You don't have to keep everything bottled up, Sienna," he urged softly. "It's okay to let someone in." But how could I let someone in when every part of me screamed that this was a betrayal? I was Mark's wife, a role I had clung to even as my heart silently crumbled. The intensity of our connection made the betrayal sting all the more deeply, and I felt caught in a vortex of guilt, longing, and despair. The inevitable moment came one night as we cleaned up after dinner. Liam reached out, his hand grazing mine, and suddenly the distance between us evaporated. His touch was both comforting and electric, stirring emotions that left me breathless. In that heart-stopping instant, his forehead rested gently against mine, and he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I opened my mouth, desperate to say that this was wrong, but the words were lost in the overwhelming tide of my feelings. A single tear slipped down my cheek, a silent admission of the turmoil raging inside me. Panicked, I pulled away. "I can't, I'm sorry, Liam. I can't cross that line," I stammered, my voice trembling with guilt and fear. His eyes, a mirror of both pain and understanding, pleaded silently for something I was too conflicted to give. "You don't have to keep everything bottled up, Sienna," he urged softly. "It's okay to let someone in." But how could I let someone in when every part of me screamed that this was a betrayal? I was Mark's wife, a role I had clung to even as my heart silently crumbled. The intensity of our connection made the betrayal sting all the more deeply, and I felt caught in a vortex of guilt, longing, and despair. In the days and weeks that followed, the void left by Liam's departure was palpable. I threw myself into rebuilding my life, trying to mend the walls that had crumbled from years of neglect. I reconnected with old parts of myself, the loyal wife, the passionate book lover, the woman who had forgotten how to be kind to her own soul. I realized that my loneliness wasn't solely a result of Mark's absence or Liam's presence, it was a mirror reflecting the parts of me I had long neglected. Sitting alone in the living room one rainy evening, I listened to the gentle patter of rain against the windows, a soothing reminder that storms, however fierce, eventually pass. In that quiet moment of introspection, I understood that true connection must be born from honesty and respect, not merely an escape from loneliness. I could no longer let my isolation dictate my choices. I owed it to myself to learn how to be there for me. Though the wounds were still fresh, I sensed a slow, tentative healing beginning. I wasn't the same person I had been before Mark left, nor was I the person I had become during Liam's brief presence. I was evolving, learning to navigate the complexities of loss, love, and self-discovery. The journey ahead remains uncertain. The storm of past heartaches and future promises still looms, but I have started to rebuild, one fragile step at a time. There are moments when I wonder what might have been if I had allowed myself to cross that forbidden line. Yet, as I watch the rain wash over my windowpane, I know that growth often comes from our deepest trials. The echoes of the past will always be a part of me, but they no longer have the power to define who I am. Please subscribe for more.